The savannah was still when she arrived. The golden grass swayed gently under the evening wind, the horizon painted in soft amber and rose. Her name was Rose Alina, a wildlife researcher who believed that even the fiercest creatures held fragments of kindness. She had come to the remote sanctuary in Kenya to study lion behavior, to understand not their power but their silence. For weeks she'd watched them from a distance, the mothers nursing cubs under shade, the males patrolling their territory, proud and ruthless. But there was one lion who moved differently, slower, heavier, older perhaps, but his eyes, they carried sorrow. He was known among the staff as Arion, the king who had lost everything. Years ago, poachers had taken his mate, leaving him scarred, distrustful of humans. Other lions feared him, yet no one saw the gentleness hidden beneath the roar. One dusk, while the other researchers rested, Rose wandered beyond the safety fence, her camera in hand, her curiosity stronger than caution. That's when she saw him. The golden mane glowed like fire in the dying light, and his amber eyes met hers across the dry grass. For a heartbeat, the world forgot to move. He didn't charge. He didn't growl. He just looked. It was the gaze of something wild that recognized something pure, and somehow she didn't step back. Her lips trembled, but she whispered, "It's okay. I'm not afraid." The lion tilted his head, nostrils flaring as if her voice carried warmth he hadn't felt in years. That night, she couldn't sleep. The moment replayed in her mind, the silence, the eyes, the invisible thread that pulled them together. For days after, she kept returning to that same place. She sat near the boundary, reading softly aloud, not for the research logs, but for him. He began to appear more often, watching her from the tall grass, listening. Each evening the distance grew smaller, until one day, when the storm came, thunder roared like an ancient beast. Lightning flashed across the plains. Rose ran toward the shelter, but slipped into a ditch, twisted her ankle, and cried out in pain. When she lifted her head, she saw two eyes glowing in the dark amber fire cutting through the rain. Arion. He approached slowly, his mane soaked, his chest heaving. The world seemed to hold its breath. Instead of attacking, he lowered his head beside her, shielding her from the rain with his massive body. His warmth pressed against her, heartbeat steady, protective. Rose reached out, her trembling fingers brushing against his wet mane. He didn't move, he didn't flinch, and in that moment, fear died. Something else was born, a bond that didn't need words, only trust.
Weeks turned into months. The girl who once came to study lions now spent her evenings beside one. Sometimes she spoke, sometimes she didn't. The silence between them was sacred, filled with the quiet pulse of understanding. Arion no longer roamed alone. He followed her scent, her voice, her laughter. He learned to wait at the same hilltop every dusk, where she'd sit reading her journal, barefoot in the dust, her hair catching sunlight like strands of gold. One evening, as she leaned against a rock, she whispered, "You remind me of everything people forget. Strength without cruelty, power with gentleness." The lion blinked slowly, eyes soft. He lowered his head until it rested beside her legs. Her hand rested on his mane, a silent promise neither of them could ever speak. But love between two worlds is never simple. News spread of a tame lion near the sanctuary. Officials grew worried. They ordered that Arion be relocated. Too close to humans, too unpredictable. Rose begged them to wait. "He's not dangerous," she said. "He's healing." But they didn't understand the language of the wild heart. The next day they came with tranquilizer rifles. Rose ran to the field as the helicopter roared above. Arion stood at the edge of the grass watching her, confused, hurt by the noise and chaos. She screamed, "No, don't shoot!" But the dart had already flown. It hit his shoulder. The lion staggered. His golden eyes met hers as his body trembled. She ran to him, falling to her knees beside his fading breath. "Stay with me, please," she whispered, tears mixing with dust. Her hand pressed against his chest. She could still feel his heartbeat, fading but there. When he finally woke again, he was in a different reserve, far from her. But lions remember. And love, once born, doesn't die, and it transforms. Months later, Rose published her research paper, but not about lion behavior. It was called The Language of Trust. In every word she spoke of him, the one who taught her that love isn't ownership but connection. One dawn, years later, she returned to the old savannah, now open for conservation. As the sun rose, she walked to the same hill where it all began. And there, among the golden grass, stood a lion, older, stronger, scar on his shoulder, eyes that still held her reflection. She froze, he did too. Then slowly he walked forward, calm, steady, no fear. When he reached her, he didn't roar. He simply pressed his forehead against her hand the same way he once had in the rain. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "I missed you too, my king." And for a moment, under the vast African sky, time forgot its rules. Man and beast, woman and lion, two souls bound by something the world could never explain. Because love doesn't always need words. Sometimes it just needs courage, and a roar that only one heart can hear. The night after Arion was taken away, Rose sat outside her tent, the savannah stretching endless and dark. Wind hissed through the grass, thunder grumbled far away. She couldn't see him, but every sound carried his memory. The air itself seemed to breathe in his rhythm. When the first gust swept across the plain, it bent the grass in one long wave, exactly the way his mane had rippled when he moved. Rose looked up. The clouds opened for a heartbeat, letting a spear of moonlight strike the field. Dust rose, swirling like a shape she knew too well. She whispered, "Arion." The wind paused. A low vibration rolled through the earth, soft, deep, familiar. Not a roar, not quite a sound at all, but a feeling that bloomed in her chest. "I'm still here." Tears blurred her sight. She pressed a hand to her heart, and for the first time since he was taken, the pain loosened. That night she dreamed. In her dream, she stood where the rain had once fallen. The world shimmered with silver light, the grass shone like glass. And there he was. Not the wounded king she'd known, but the lion he was meant to be. Mane bright as sunrise, eyes clear amber. He didn't speak, but his gaze carried words. "You taught me trust, now carry it for others." She stepped forward. Her fingers brushed the air where his fur should have been. Warmth flooded her palm as if the light itself remembered him. Then the dream dissolved into dawn. Morning brought stillness, yet something had changed. Where her notebook lay open, one crimson petal rested, its edges faintly glimmering. Rose smiled. "A rose from the wind," she murmured. From that day she worked differently. She spoke softly to every creature she studied, never using cages, never forcing. When nervous cubs approached, the breeze would rise and circle them, calming them. The local rangers began calling her the Whisperer. She never told them that. Sometimes she heard a low purr beneath the wind. Months later, she returned to the valley where they had first met. Grass had grown tall again. The river had carved new paths. She knelt, setting down a single rose on the ground. "I kept your promise," she said. "No one will harm them again." The air grew still, heavy with sunlight. Then faintly, the tall grass bowed, as though something unseen walked past. A ripple of gold shimmered through it, rising toward the hill. Rose smiled through tears. "Go on, Arion," she whispered. "The world remembers your roar." And the wind answered with a deep, steady hum that felt like a heartbeat. Years later, travelers spoke of a strange thing on calm evenings near that hill. A whisper of wind that sounded like a lion breathing, and a scent of wild roses that appeared where no flowers grew. Rose knew better. Love that is honest never ends, it simply changes shape, taking root in the places where courage once bloomed. And somewhere beyond the horizon, carried by every warm gust of air, the lion still walks beside the girl who taught him how to love.